been, you might say, looking at the word mystic, and in the process of this, if you don't mind, we'll wax a little technical today. But first of all, there's another, maybe a little bit off color story about that student who was with his master, and his master said, go and bring me the filthiest, lowest thing that you can find. And so the student went off and he racked his brains. What could it be? How can I find the lowest of the low? But then, as he was going along, he suddenly had an urge to eliminate. So he went behind a tree and he defecated. And then he thought, there, my own shit. And he was just about to go and scoop up a little of this shit when the shit spoke to him and said, don't touch me. Don't come near me. Look at me. This morning I was that beautiful piece of baklava that you ate at the coffee shop. This is a clue to what comes after. But you perhaps remember very well that saying that's been quoted so often, but not for some time. Take all perceptions, experiences, from the sensual, the aesthetic or the occult, and the transcendent levels of mind, and bring them to the subtle level of mind. The mind of body, appearances, and also transcendence. The body of appearances, the mind of awareness, what's the rest of it? Anyway, speech of vibrations. From where they flow down the passages at the side of the spine and rise up as our thoughts and our deeds. But we know that it stands to reason that if we take something in, an experience, a perception, at that basic level of mind, that cause and effect level, that sensual level of mind, that when it comes out, after it's passed down and gathered the accretions of our conditioned mind, that's what's going to come out of our mouth as the result. So I want to give you a riddle. And to solve this riddle, or to bring up an understanding of this story, all three levels of mind have to be engaged. All three levels of the subtle level of mind must be engaged to understand the story and to understand life. And perhaps this will give us a clue as to what our experience of the mystic is. There was a king, and he had one son, and one son only. There was very great rejoicing when the son was born, and he adored this boy. But he decided that he wanted to make a room that was so aesthetically pleasing that in this room his son would feel totally at home with existence and life as a potential king. So he engaged 4 of the greatest artists in the land to decorate the walls of this room. Now he gave them all the accoutrements that were needed to do their job, and he said, you have 1 month to complete this work. Well, the artists all went to work very diligently on their walls. The first artist decided that he was going to paint a mural of the people of the realm, knowing that this king was caring of all his people, and this would remind the boy that his duties were to take care of those under his charge. And then the second artist decided that he would make a beautiful mural of the kingdom, the gardens, the trees, the forests, the animals, to let this boy know that he also was caring of the nature and all that it held. And then the third artist decided that he would paint a portrait of the king himself, so that the king would recognize that there was a presence here, there was a duty here, it was his to wear. And the fourth artist, well, he bumbled around, whilst the other artists were busy painting their murals, the fourth artist would sit around smoking, and then he'd go around and admire the other artists' work, and he'd even sit down and have a little nap from time to time. And then a couple of days before the month was up, the fourth artist got very busy. He went out and he was bringing in pieces of elements, and he was very busy on his wall. And so on the day that the king came down to inspect the work, he went to the mural of the first artist, and there was a depiction of the faces of his people and the people going about their daily business. It was just an exquisite piece of life. Immediately, the king had a container of gold brought in and placed at the bottom of the mural as payment to this artist for his wonderful work. And then he went to the second mural, and there was this scene, so alive. You could almost smell the blossoms on the trees, and the king was just so very impressed with this work. He ordered another container of gold to be placed at the base of the wall. And then the third artist, when he looked at himself depicted on the wall, tears fell down his cheeks. He was a humble man, but when he saw himself made in such a beautiful image, almost saint-like, he wept and immediately had another container of gold brought and placed at the base of the wall. But then when he came to the wall of the fourth artist, the artist had pieced together a mirror, pieces of mirror that had been brought together to cover the wall, so that all the other three walls were reflected in the mirrors on the wall. And the king said, "This is an extraordinary piece of work." But then he turned and was about to leave the room when the fourth artist said, "But what about my payment? There are containers of gold for all these artists that..." "Oh," said the king, "look in your mirror. There, reflected in the mirror, were the three pots of gold, along with all the other reflections." How to solve this riddle? How to understand this story? To do so, you're challenged to not only bring this story from this level of mind which contains the sensual, the aesthetic, and the transcendent. These are the levels of mind that most people operate on. But bring them to the subtle levels of body, speech, and mind. The body of appearances, the speech of vibrations, and the mind of awareness. And when we put these three together, as is called a state of Satchitananda, or existence, knowledge, and bliss, we have what we need to understand this riddle. And in so doing, we might come closer to recognizing the mystic in us. Not the mystic that our mind has taken and thought it's up there somewhere with these amazing magical qualities. It's something that abides in us. So, find the answer to this riddle, if you will. You do know how these stories are. They kind of get in there. Even if you want to forget them, they're going to come up and bite you on the nose, like a lot of other things do. So let it do its work and see what comes up for you as an understanding of what this story means.